The trap stands intact. That's what the trapper finds on the first morning. The log still suspended, the trigger in place, the pen with every branch exactly where it was left the afternoon before. Outside, in the thin mud the overnight rain left behind, a single track. 4 toes, the central pad deep, the lateral thumb barely touching the ground. The bait is gone. He stands looking at the branches on the left side of the pen. One of them is slightly displaced, the bark scratched about 6 inches from the ground. A small mark. The kind of thing that goes unnoticed by someone who doesn't know what they're looking for. She didn't come in through the front. The track out there, calm in the mud. That's the signature. Not of an animal that escaped by luck. Of an animal that was never in danger. And this is where the deadfall's real story begins. Not in the trap's construction, in what happens when it fails, and what that failure teaches. Before understanding the mistake, you have to understand the adversary. The red fox isn't difficult to capture because it's large or fast. It's difficult because its nose works like a complete map of everything that's passed through a place in the last few hours. When it approaches a trap, it's not looking at the trap. It's reading everything the trapper left behind without realizing it. The smell of hands is the most obvious, but it's not the only one. Fresh-cut wood smells different from old wood. Turned earth smells different from untouched earth. New branches don't creak the same as old ones when the wind passes. A pen built yesterday is, to an experienced fox, a complete disturbance in the environment, olfactory, auditory, visual. It reads all of this at once, and if any detail isn't right, it leaves. There's something else. The fox that's already been through a dangerous situation doesn't repeat the same behavior. It learns. There are reports of trappers who operated in the same region for years and had to change their method each season, not because the previous method was bad, but because the local animals had processed the information about it. When everything is wrong in the first deadfall, it's almost always for one of these reasons. Why did she come back for the bait without triggering the mechanism? That answer only appears after understanding how the trap works, and where, specifically, this one failed. The deadfall begins with the pen. The pen is an open fence made of branches stuck in the ground with an open front. It doesn't need to be elaborate. It needs to serve one specific function: force the animal to approach the bait from a single direction, through the front, where the drop mechanism is positioned. If the animal can reach the bait from any other angle, the entire trap loses its purpose. The pen's branches need to be stuck in the ground without enough lateral play for an adult snout to insert itself. This is the first mistake that appears frequently. Branches spaced too far apart on the sides, placed there only to create the visual form of an enclosure, without considering that the fox will test every point of weakness before risking entry through the front. If it finds 2 centimeters of slack in any lateral branch, that's where it will go. The branches should preferably be old wood that has already passed through at least one winter, without the smell of fresh cutting, without active sap on the surface. Fresh cut wood smells. The fox senses this from meters away. With the pen ready comes the log. For a fox, the log should be between 7 and 8 feet long and between 5 and 6 inches in diameter. The heavier end goes toward the front, positioned horizontally over the pen's opening. 2 sturdy branches are stuck in the ground on the outside, one on each side, leaving exact space for the log to rise and fall freely between them and the pen's structure. Firm enough to guide the fall in a straight line, but without touching the log. A second, smaller log is placed on the ground directly below, the ground log, which serves as an anvil. Without it, the impact dissipates in soft earth. With it, The weight concentrates where it needs to. For a fox or raccoon, additional stones or logs are placed on the elevated end of the main log to increase weight. An adult fox weighs between 6 and 15 pounds. The impact needs to be decisive. All of this is correct in the first trap. The error comes in what follows. The deadfall's trigger mechanism uses 3 pieces. Understanding each one and the exact relationship between them is what separates a trap that works from one that will stay armed forever without catching anything. The first piece is the bait stick, a forked branch about 12 inches long, pointed at the lower end and with the fork holding the bait tilted toward the ground. At the upper end, a small square notch is cut, with the flat face pointing downward. The second piece is the flat stick, a straight stick about 5.5 inches long, with both ends planed flat. One end goes under the suspended log. The other rests on the head of a vertical stake stuck in the ground outside the log. The third piece is that vertical stake, sturdy, with a flat head. It's stuck in the ground on the external side of the pen, and it's on this that the flat stick balances. The assembly works like this. The log is raised, and one end of the flat stick is placed under it, with the other end resting on the head of the vertical stake. This flat stick is what keeps the log in the air, but for now it's just resting, with nothing holding the bait. Then comes the bait stick. Its lower point is rested on a small chip of wood or stone on the ground inside the pen, and the notch at the top is fitted under the tip of the flat stick. The bait, in the fork, points toward the side of the pen, never toward the front. This detail of the bait pointing to the side is critical. When the animal grabs the bait and pulls or twists, the rotation of the fork itself forces the notch out from under the flat stick. The pieces separate, the flat stick loses its support, the log falls. If the bait is pointing toward the front, the animal can pull without producing that rotation, and the trigger doesn't fire. Now, the most important point of calibration. The log cannot be resting heavily on the flat stick. Most of the weight needs to fall on the vertical stake. If the flat stick is supporting too much weight, any greater pressure will be needed to trigger, and the fox won't exert that pressure. It will touch lightly, distrust any resistance, and back away. The correct test. The log is raised, the mechanism is assembled, and a finger is placed on the bait with pressure equivalent to a snout touch. Light, almost without force. If the log falls, the balance is right. If it requires firm pressure, the flat stick is assuming too much weight. Adjust the position. Less of the log on the flat stick, more on the stake. Test again. In the first trap, this balance was wrong. The mechanism was too rigid. The fox touched the bait, felt the resistance, and decided not to force it. But she also did something more than that. What the fox really did that first night wasn't try to trigger the mechanism. It was test the entire pen. She arrived from the right, stopped about 13 meters away. The kind of pause an experienced animal makes when reading the environment before committing. She sniffed. She circled. She tested each branch on the sides with her snout until she found the one with 2 centimeters of slack on the left side. She inserted her snout carefully. She didn't push the branches around. She opened space delicately, testing resistance before each movement. She reached the bait with the tip of her tongue, pulled it to the side with a lateral movement, without vertical pressure, without triggering anything. The bait came out through the same slack where the snout had entered. The calm track in the mud outside was the final point of the story. She walked away, because she was never in danger. This is how an old fox operates. It doesn't attack the problem head-on. It walks around it until it finds where the problem ends and open space begins. The trapper who doesn't understand this will rebuild the same trigger mechanism a third and fourth time. wondering why it doesn't work, never realizing the problem was 2 centimeters to the side. The second pen begins differently. This time, the branches are chosen one by one. Old wood, bark already dry, no smell of fresh cutting. Stuck in the ground without enough lateral play for an adult snout. The distance between them is tested with gloved fingers before moving to the next one. The main log is rolled into position without being lifted. The 2 lateral stakes are stuck in the ground, tested by pushing the log to both sides. Firm, without oscillation. The ground log is positioned carefully underneath, aligned to receive the central impact. The top of the pen is covered with crossed branches. This detail is often overlooked, but it's necessary. There are documented cases of animals that climbed the pen's side, reached the bait from above without entering through the front, and triggered the mechanism from behind, escaping unharmed. With the top covered, the animal is forced to choose, through the front, or abandon the bait. Now, the trigger mechanism. The bait stick is cut with the fork pointing to the side, the notch at the top with the flat face pointing downward. The flat stick has both ends planed. One goes under the log, the other on the head of the vertical stake. The fit between the bait stick's notch and the flat stick's tip is made slowly, tested, before releasing the weight. The calibration. The log is lifted, the mechanism is assembled, and the balance is verified by touch. Pressure of 1 finger. The log falls. The mechanism is reassembled. The fit adjusted 1 millimeter higher. Pressure of 1 finger. The log falls. Another adjustment. This time the finger holds. Pressure of 2 fingers. It holds. A breath. It holds. A touch with the fingertip, equivalent to a fox's snout investigating cautiously. It falls. That's what's right. A small notch can be cut into the vertical stake at the exact point where the bait stick rests. This ensures that when the system collapses, it collapses at the right end, without the stick sliding to the side without dropping the log. Here's the error that destroys more traps than any calibration problem. During the assembly of the second pen, at some point the gloves go in the pocket for 2 seconds. A branch is crooked. The knife needs adjustment. The bare hand touches the lateral stake to test if it's firm enough. 2 seconds. Maybe 3. The smell of human hand penetrates the wood. Especially wood with open fibers. Rubbing damp earth over it reduces, but doesn't eliminate. The fox that sniffs the pen will sense that as the presence of man, recent, at that specific point. Not as thought, as a sign of danger. The stake is pulled out and replaced. Not because the wood was bad, because 2 seconds of carelessness is worth an entire night of wasted work. Every trapper learns this one way or another, usually the hardest way possible, finding the trap intact for the second morning in a row, unable to understand why. With the pen ready and the mechanism calibrated comes the bait. For a suspicious fox, the right bait isn't the most delicious. It's the hardest to ignore. A piece of dead meat attracts, but the experienced fox approaches the meat calmly, evaluates, and if anything isn't right, a wrong smell, a shadow out of place, it leaves. The bait was processed as information. The conclusion, not worth the risk. A live duck is different. The duck tied at the bottom of the pen quacks, flaps its wings, smells like a live animal present. This triggers something that doesn't pass through the fox's cautious reasoning. The instinct that says live prey doesn't wait, that hesitation has a cost, that another predator might arrive first. The fox that suspects everything still has instincts, and instincts can be used. The duck is tied at the bottom with a short rope, space enough to move, not enough to reach the branches. The knot is tied with gloves. The rope is rubbed in damp earth. The bait points to the side of the pen, not toward the front. A scent trail, trappers called it medicine, can be dragged along the ground starting from the pen in several directions, like the spokes of a wheel. Rabbit skin, bird head, any substance with strong smell rubbed on a piece of wood dragged through the forest. This brings the animal from far away to the entrance. The bait inside does the rest. The duck starts quacking as soon as it's positioned. The sound spreads through the forest in the silence of the closing afternoon. Low, repetitive, the kind of noise that stays in the head of any predator 300 meters away. The night of waiting is the part most trappers get wrong in a different way. Instinct says to go check, to verify what that noise was, to confirm the mechanism is still in order. The trapper who goes to the trap in the middle of the night leaves a trail of fresh scent, disturbs the soil around it, possibly scares away the animal that was still circling 50 meters away. The trapper stays at camp, far enough that the smell of heated food and smoke doesn't reach the pen. The forest at night isn't silent. It's the kind of environment where you learn the difference between silence that means nothing and sudden silence that means everything. An owl flying low paralyzes the crickets in a 20-meter radius. A branch that creaks with wind sounds different from a branch that creaks with weight on it. The duck quacks twice quickly around midnight, then stops. Waiting after that moment is the hardest part. In the morning, the fog hasn't lifted when the trapper approaches the pen. The log is down. He slows his pace about 50 feet away, studying the ground before getting closer. No exit tracks spreading outward. A lateral branch slightly displaced. She tried the same point as before. This time, she didn't get through. The closer branches held. The fox is under the log, motionless, its neck crossed by the log's weight on the ground log. The duck at the bottom of the pen continues to move. There's no drama in this. It's the result of a corrected calculation. Pen closed, mechanism calibrated at the right point, bait that couldn't be ignored, and no smell of hand left on the wrong wood. Each error from the first night was identified and corrected. The second trap worked because the first taught what was wrong. What made the difference between the two traps? The tighter pen? Yes. The live duck? Partially. The trigger with correct balance? Sensitive to light touch? Yes. But there's one detail worth stopping on. The stake replaced after the bare hand touch. 2 seconds of carelessness, corrected on the spot. If the trapper had decided that damp earth on top was enough, the fox would have sensed that stake before getting close to the trigger. It probably would have backed away. The second trap would have failed for the same invisible reason that destroys more traps than any construction error. Human presence left where it shouldn't be. The deadfall is a simple trap. 3 trigger pieces, a log, a pen of branches, bait. Anyone can assemble one in less than an hour. But making it work for an animal that's already been deceived before requires that every detail, the spacing of the branches, the balance of the mechanism, the choice of bait, the control of scent, the patience of not going to check in the middle of the night, be right all at once. If this kind of knowledge makes sense to you, not as curiosity, but as something you want to truly understand, this channel was made for that. Each video goes deeper into a technique, an animal, a specific problem. Subscribe if you want to continue. The captured fox is old. The front paws have scars from metal, the specific mark that a steel trap leaves when it closes and the animal escapes before the trapper arrives. An old groove in the right front paw, thick skin grown over bone. She had been caught before, in another trap, in another place, in another time. And yet, She survived long enough to grow old, to learn to steal bait from the side of poorly built pens, to develop the testing behavior that almost made the second trap fail too. Somewhere in the same forest, there are kits that grew up watching this fox, that learned to circle the pen before entering through the front. That inherited the distrust. The deadfall that worked today will need to be different next season. Not much different. Just enough. This is how the game works. Without end. Without perfect method. Without final lesson. Just the next morning, the next track, and the decision to pay attention to what the animal is trying to teach.